Welcome to Politics Done Right on KPFT. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Give me a call at 713-526-5738. That is 713-526-KPFT. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Williams, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show, specifically because we have some great people here today. Right, Don?
That is correct.
Hey, Don, how you doing today, my
friend?
friend?
I am doing so great.
I know, but we're trying to keep things going here. How was your weekend, my brother?
Not
your weekend. We already did all of that.
I was going to say I've been working all weekend.
I know, because the weekend is coming up. That is what we're looking for, right, guys?
That's right.
Absolutely. So, anyhow, what's been happening?
Oh, for me, I've been working.
Yeah,
clearly, I've been working.
we are gonna have you working even harder now, because after we do this, we're gonna have the phones ringing and all that kind of stuff, right?
That is fine with me.
But anyhow, we are gonna have a great show today, folks. The title of the show today is "Progressives Can Check the Democratic Establishment with 2018 Wins." Is that great or what?
That's perfect.
It's going to happen, folks. It's going to happen. Subtitle, Millennials, 2018, Key to Victory for Progressives. Anyhow, folks, we have been at this for a long time. I have been at this for a long time. Not so much they have been at this, but I have been at this for a long time. It is time to stop talking and start acting. Progressives can single-handedly make the Democratic Party quasi-civil war moot by doing one thing. And you know what that one thing is? Winning. And that's what we have here. Winners. Millennials are the answer to extricate the entrenched orthodoxy that has done little to rid us of an ever-growing plutocracy. In that light today, we are honored to have, it was supposed to be 3 millennials here, but one didn't show. So we'll figure that out later on. Anyhow, we have with us Aaron Moore. Is originally from a town near New Orleans in Louisiana. He is an LSU graduate with a civil engineering degree. Man, I love the word engineering. I'm an engineer.
Sounds
too.
pretty good.
I love that. After the 2016 election, Aaron decided he needed to be more involved to make the world a better place for everyone. And that's not cliche. You know why it's not cliche? He kept searching for something to put this energy into, and saw that no one was running against his state representative, Jim Murphy. So what did he do? He said, I'm here, I'm going to do it, and he decided to run. That is what we need progressives to do. That is what we need our millennials to do. And you know what? He did it. Then, of course, we have Lina Hidalgo was raised in an immigrant family. She was born in Colombia and grew up in Peru, Mexico, and Texas. Let me tell you something. I'm originally from Panama, Central America. We used to be a province of Colombia, man.
I was going to bring it up.
You were going to bring that up?
I wasn't, but now that you bring it up.
Yeah, were you going to give me a hard time about Americans signing the treaty in 1903 and then saying, hey, let's build a canal?
I wasn't going to go there.
You wasn't going to go there?
I'll let you take that.
Oh, you're such a nice person. Hey, you see, that is why she must win, because she's so nice. Anyhow, folks, Lina graduated with a political science degree from Stanford University. Over the last 2 years, Lina has been pursuing a joint degree in law and public policy at NYU and Harvard. Man, she's going to have a lot to teach us, folks. She has been giving back, supporting the vulnerable communities, and more and more. I mean, these folks have some real bios, and that they decided to leave what they're currently doing or kind of mitigate what they're currently doing to be a part of the solution. That is to be commended. But folks, before I get to the program, I want to remind all of you that the listeners at KPFT is a bastion of intelligent voices and programs. As a political activist myself, my favorite programs are The Monitor with
Mark Babawi.
When is that again?
That's Mondays at 7 p.m.
And of course, there's Think Wing Radio with
Mike Honig on Mondays at 9 p.m.
Partisan Gridlock with
my friend and yours, Jeff Berg, on Fridays at 3 p.m.
And of course, there's Open Journal with Dwayne
Bradley and Marlo Blue on Mondays at 6. Technically, he's with Neil right now. But
that's who it is now?
Uh-huh.
Okay, got you, buddy. And of course, my show, Jazz Latino, Afro-Cuban Latin Jazz with
Juan Flores on Tuesdays at 12 noon.
And then, of course, we have, I think you like to just bite several pieces of the apple because we have your shows coming up now. We have The Human Condition at 3 p.m. followed by The Free Minstrel Show with Don and Dwayne, your brother, at 4 p.m. on Fridays on KPFT, the HD3 side. So, folks, check out our full schedule at kpft.org where you can find programming from music to politics and medicine to the eclectic. KPFT is listener-supported community radio. So, please remember that if you like what you hear, you know what we need. If you like what you hear, you must be a part of our family. We're not in fund drive mode, but we always want you to go to kpft.org and keep the only station that give voices like Aaron and Lena on air to give the proper point of view. Anyhow, folks, before I go to that, please remember, we are at hashtag Politics Done Right, and you can follow me at Egberto Willies Twitter. Anyhow, you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, the blog post for today. Progressives prove ourselves by winning the primaries and then the whole thing. And I want you to listen to this blog. I want both the millennials, the progressives, and the establishment to listen to this blog. Okay, here we go. Democrats had big wins throughout the country this week. It was bigger than everyone expected. In fact, many feared that Democrats would lose the big one, the Virginia governorship. Progressives came out in droves. It is likely the activation of the progressive base by the various progressive groups like Indivisible and others that sealed the progressive success in this election. Throughout the country, they have been relentless. Big money did not do it in 2016. If you doubt it, check out the amount of money that was spent by Hillary versus what was spent by Trump. Throughout the country, they have been relentless. Big money did not do it in 2016, and big money did not do it in 2017. Investment in the grassroots did it. And I tell you what, Daily Kos contributor DNC member Chris Reeves wrote that was the DNC modus operandi in Virginia. As he said, this is what he said. In Virginia, rather than TV, the DNC committed to move more than $1.5 million into field programs. In other words, the grassroots. This is something that state parties have asked for, funding to get out the vote. Funding not for TV programs, but otherwise. He also said 100% of the money the DNC invested in Virginia went to organizing. So as you can see, it is all about grassroots. It's not about the big money. Anyhow, one would think that the last election cycle would have illustrated that communication with the grassroots as opposed to a sea of money from millionaires and billionaire donors is more effective at getting people to the polls. A narrative that speaks to the people, conditions with solutions that solve their problems on a daily basis is what they want. The answer always looked like a far-left solution to the wealthy, whether Democrat or Republican. Polls show most Americans want progressive policies. Medicare for all, a guaranteed basic income, labor unions, pay-it-forward tuition, a Social Security one can live on, and more. These policies are considered far left, even by some in the Democratic Party. It's crazy. In a recent interview on MSNBC with Stephanie Rule, the following exchange occurred with Stephen Klubeck. She said, when Democrats continue to say, down with the billionaires, we can't stand the rich, said Stephanie Rule. A lot of people want to be rich. So is it the right message that Democrats are going with? This is what this guy said now, not my words. It's so effing wrong, said Stephen Klubeck. I've talked to Schumer, I've talked to Wyden, I've talked to Pelosi. I said that if you use the term billionaires again, I am done because it's aspirational. I didn't start with anything. Just penalize everyone that's done well. We all want to do well, and we should be the party of doing well. Actually, I agree with that part. We should be the party of doing well. We should be a party of business and leadership. I agree with that too. And it is very, very disturbing when I hear the millionaire or billionaire word, and I told them to stop it, knock it off. But you don't have the right to say stop it, knock it off, because there are some issues where money are concerned. So she comes back. Then, are you worried that the Democratic Party is going too far to the left? Rule asked. So much so it drives me nuts. Klubeck responded, so much so it would make me quit the party, and I've made it very clear I'll cut your money off and others will do the same. In other words, donors to the Democratic establishment are telling the leaders of the Democratic Party to ignore the will of the people to maintain some middle ground advantageous to the few. And if the Democratic does not oblige, the wealthy donors will pack up and leave. Stephanie Rule then continued her questioning based on a false premise. Right now, there is an opportunity, Rule said. If Democrats lose, for example, in the state of Virginia, if that isn't a wake-up call that the Democratic leadership needs to get together and say, we've got to find a middle ground, because if the Democrats continue to go far left, you've got that whole group in the center that just aren't going to go the way of Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, and then you're going to fracture the party even more. Really? The fracture within the Democratic Party has more to do with the leadership and the grassroots than with the Democrats and progressives in general. There are those who want to hold on to the middle because that is where the progressive wealthy establishment Democrats reside. Ironically, it is not that far away from where the conservative wealthy establishment Republicans live. They're on the same rails, folks. It is a concept of the left and right rail being different but heading in the same direction. The 2016 election proved that Americans don't just want left or right rails. Their current economic and social conditions demand a derailment. A progressive derailment is much more advantageous to the masses than a right-wing derailment, which would be the virtual enslavement of the other, people of color, women, the poor, gays, and many others. The election of people of all types, political persuasions, and values is probative. That's what occurred in Virginia. Everybody got elected. Every progressive that ran got elected because they spoke to the values of the people, folks. They spoke to the values of the people. It illustrates that the progressive movement has the reach most activists knew it had. If you just let it out there, if you just put it out there, it explodes. Progressives do not need to fight what many refer to as the establishment. You don't have to go out there and fight the party. You don't need to do that. They just need to replicate Virginia, New Jersey, Washington State, the elected that was not supposed to be elected, women, and more. Progressives must run for precinct chairs in the Democratic primaries. Most importantly, saturate the primaries with progressives for local, state, and national offices. Progressives must realize that winning is more effective than talking. Talking is cheap. The most recent election proves we're well, and we're well on our way, folks. Folks, telephone number 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. We have two great guests, and I want you to call in, but we're going to have a little conversation here. Let these guests introduce themselves, tell a little bit about themselves, and then we'll move on. And if you want to call in, you can as well. Aaron and Lena, how are you guys doing today?
Pretty good, pretty good.
I want to thank you both for being here because I think this is important for us to get the message out. Now, Aaron, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, like you said, I'm from Louisiana originally. And before the show started, we talked about Louisiana actually had free college when I was there. If you got the grades, you had the GPA, you go to college tuition free. So I'm not personally saddled with all the student debt that many people are talking about. And that was freeing for me to be able to pursue what I wanted to and contribute back to society without being burdened with this debt. Now, I came to Houston, and after the 2016 election, during the election, I was definitely participating. But when I moved into my new house over close on the west side of town, the current incumbent, Jim Murphy, was running unopposed. And Jim Murphy is not an evil guy per se, but what he does and how he votes does not help the constituents of that district.
Right.
He ran unopposed, and I figured the last thing, or the best thing I could do is jump in there and challenge him for the 2018 race. And that's what I'm trying to do, and take advantage of all this movement of standing up for issues and not just the left versus the right.
I love that you said that. It's not about the left versus the right. I mean, we've been stuck into that, and I kind of like to show that we have rails is what we're talking about, and these rails are going in the same direction. So I don't really know all that is. I think we've sort of been boxed in. We need to derail. Lena, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much, Egberto, for having me. And it's so happy to be here with Aaron as well. So Aaron talked a little bit about free college. My parents, when I was growing up, they spent really an arm and a leg paying for expensive private schools in Latin America when I was younger. And when I got here, I was so amazed. I'm a suburbs kid, and I was so amazed that my public high school had tennis courts and a film room, and it was as nice as, if not nicer than what we had. And I when I was born in Colombia, it was the height of the drug war. Everyone knew somebody who'd been kidnapped, and so coming here and seeing it is possible to have this baseline opportunity of a better future for everyone. And so I a lot of the reason really why I'm running is my story is why I'm running, is the fact that I came and I happened to come into a high school in a community where I felt extremely safe and I had these opportunities. But I know that there are people around the country, around our county, Harris County, that feel as unsafe and that are as held back as my family did when I was living in Colombia. And I want every family and every kid in this county to have the opportunities that I did. So I'm running, I don't think we mentioned it earlier, I'm running for Harris County Judge for the Commissioner's Court. And people often, get confused about the name, and that's part of the problem is there's this body, it's an administrative body, it's not a judicial position. They don't deal with criminal or civil cases, rather they control the budget for the county. So these are the people that have been deciding where infrastructure money goes, roads, bridges, mosquito control, flood control. And we can get into more of that later, but that's a little bit about me and what we're running for, what we're trying to achieve here.
Well, first, I want to touch on that a little bit further. First of all, you're a young person, you're a millennial, and you are running against a person that is, I'm not sure yet who you'll be running against in the primaries, but ultimately when you get out of the primaries, you'll be running against a very established candidate here in Harris County. Explaining to the masses right now in Harris County, why would they put their trust in you, a young millennial? I have answers, but I want to hear what your answers would be.
We just saw it with Harvey. I mean, I think we need a county, for one, that's not falling apart, that is running smoothly. That means infrastructure, that means public safety, that means flooding. Now, Addicts, Barker, that was the prime example there. You're building houses essentially in a reservoir. Yes. That's just stupid. And there are homes, there are people that are you talk to them, we lost not as many homes as elsewhere, but any one of those, it was lowest hanging fruit to let people know that they were living there. We lost, the recovery effort I was just reading is going to cost around $180 billion. If you look at that, that is the state budget for the 2-year state budget almost. When you make that kind of mistake, you know that you need different leadership, that we need to be better. So truly, we need fresh leadership. That's what this showed us, is we need different thinking. We need fresh leadership. The people that got us here should not be the same people managing the money that is coming in after the recovery. The people that were not heeding the warnings of the engineers, that were not putting people first, that are now, or even with the rebuilding and with what happened, that had been turning their backs on the most vulnerable.
Right.
Because what this did is really exacerbated the inequalities in the county. So I think what happened was a warning. It pulled the curtain back that business as usual is not working. We have people all over the country, all over the world saying they do not want to be the next Harris County. Look at what happened. So how can we possibly keep the same leadership? And there's a wave in the nation, as you were talking about, that people are seeing that we need change, and it is time for people to stand up and for people to elect folks that are going to reflect our values and really work for all of us, not after it floods, not just then, but before, and make sure that we've got that basic level of opportunity so everyone can have access to a better future.
Well, I just need to say this for our audience out there. We have two candidates here that I think represent the progressive side. Of course, offers are made for candidates, the opposition candidates as well, not only any Democratic opposition, but the Republican oppositions or independent opposition. So this forum is open to everybody. Being for FCC reasons, we have to make sure and let that be known that this is open for absolutely everybody. Now, Aaron, let's first of all, before I come to you, Aaron, I want to say that I loved your answer because, in effect, you speak completely against what needs to be spoken about, and that is the status quo. We sometimes get into a comfort zone, and whenever you have your politicians move into a comfort zone, that is where we get the occurrences like we got with a flood that occurred that should have been mitigated years ago. There were studies that were made in the 1990s when I-10 was being rebuilt, that had channels that directed the water back into the Gulf that nobody looked at. So it's amazing that I imagine if somebody else was there who thought about it, it would have been done. Aaron, tell me a little bit now about your plans. It seems to me like assuming the two of you were to be elected, it seems like you would be working in concert, you on the federal level the
state level.
I mean,
yeah.
I'm sorry, the state.
No worries.
You know how that
That's
goes.
the next step. That's the next step.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know it's the state level, and the federal just came up at the state level to help with whatever mitigation would be needed. So what are your plans in general?
So this is my favorite topic. I worked as a civil engineer, and infrastructure was already one of my issues that I was going to cover. The flood and the hurricane and the flood happened. Both Barker and Addicts are north and west of the district that I'm running for.
Right.
When those dams got released, all of that water came to this district, into my home, in my neighborhood.
You were flooded as well?
I was close. It came up to my foundation, but not all the way.
Not all the way.
Just 2 blocks down the street, those houses flooded. And the water knows no boundaries.
Right.
It rose and flooded out many hundreds of homes in my community. Mm-hmm. What happens when legislators and representatives don't accept science and don't listen to engineers? We have flooding. If you don't acknowledge that climate change is real, then you ignore it and you accept the 500 and 100-year flood levels, and that's not acceptable. With the increase of climate change, we have increased levels of storms that are going to be coming in, and if you don't acknowledge that, we can't prepare for the future as accurately. Jim Murphy takes a lot of money from builders and contractors, and so he's financially incentivized not to write legislation for home builders to protect future homeowners. So those homes that Lena was talking about built inside the reservoir, they're literally built inside of a bowl that is intended to fill up. And the information that would have let that homeowner know, hey, your home is inside of a reservoir, is one sentence on a plat document that the homeowner never sees. And that benefits the contractor and the builder and hurts the homeowner. And we're talking about issues that help the people, not the special interests. And if you're a builder, you want your home levels and your home sales to stay high, you try and hide all the pertinent information. And Republicans love to talk about capitalism, but capitalism requires a knowledgeable consumer. And if you don't know what you're buying, then you are not participating in a true form of capitalism.
It requires open information as well.
Right.
That is what it's based on, that open information. Well, before I ask any more questions, I have some callers here. So let's go ahead and get to Heinesberg on line 1.
Hey.
Yes, sir.
Hey. It's Heisenberg.
Heisenberg, how are you doing, my friend? Do you have some questions?
We've spoken before.
Uh-huh.
My main question is I was just wondering your thoughts on the Donna Brazile confession of the rigged primaries by the DNC. I tried to get that question answered by Jeff Berg last week, and he refused to take my call, but he has hung up on me 3 times before. And I just found it interesting that they hang up on listener sponsors.
Well, you don't have to worry about me. I don't hang up on anybody.
When I spoke with you before, you seemed kind of hesitant to say that the primary was rigged. Jeff Berg just flat out laughed in my face and called me a Bernie bro, and then pretty much hung up on me when I was trying to prove how much of a fake progressive he really is.
No, well, I can't let you call my good friend a fake progressive, but let me just say, we just have different ways of approaching things. And let me just say this. I want to keep this program concentrated on both Lena and Aaron because this is a subject at hand, but I will give you a quick answer. There's nothing Donna came out and said that I didn't already know or assumed. Okay, so I mean, that is really old news, and I think it was brought up in a lot of ways to create, in the way it was brought up to create some friction. Now, as you all know, I'm taking off my host hat right now. I was a Bernie delegate to Philadelphia, and I also taken off the host hat, FCC and all that stuff. I also voted for Hillary Clinton. I'm a very pragmatic person in the way I handle my politics. That said, I am not going to continue to entertain the current fight within the Democratic Party or the progressive wing of the party and the establishment wing of the party, because I think it really, in my humble opinion, makes no sense to do so. What we have to do is start looking forward. I brought 2 great millennials on who are very progressives, and what they're going to do, as I understand it, they are going to go into primaries and they're going to fight where progressives really should be fighting. When that is over, folks need to make the appropriate decision and elect people that best represent their values, the best that they can.
So Tom Perez purging all the Bernie people out of the committees of the DNC.
Let me stop you right there, my friend, and repeat what I just said, because this is very important. I don't give a hoot about the DNC. I don't give a hoot about the establishment Democratic Party. I give a complete hoot about people. So what I'm spending my time to do is not to find out what these folks are doing in the establishment. I am spending my time to try to get progressives out there. And I'm talking about progressive Democrats, progressive Republicans, progressives independents. I'm trying to get those folks out there to get our message out so that I don't know what you do for a living, but so that you would be doing just fine in your life. Okay?
Oh, well, progressive Republican, that's a new one. So.
Yes, I know. I'll talk about that on another show, but thank you very much for calling. Okay, my friend?
No problem.
All right, great. All right, let's go to Gary real quickly. Gary, come on in.
Yes, I just want to play devil's advocate.
Please
here.
do. You always do.
I am in favor of what your guest has said about clamping down on the self-serving of people selling property and making subdivisions in flood areas. Mm-hmm. However, I think you have overlooked the fact that anybody predicted the speed of the acceleration of climate change. So, I've lived in Houston 50 years, and Addicks and Barker Cypress reservoirs have never overflowed before. And yes, we do have a flooding issue in Houston, but yes, it's getting a lot worse. But also, I've heard many climate scientists saying about the melting of the Arctic and the glaciers and the flooding, that it's just going faster and faster and faster, and nobody could have seen this, so they may be being a little too hard on our previous leaders.
Let let Lena answer that, and after that I want to say something. Go ahead, Lena.
Yeah, I wanted to say earlier, actually, we saw it as 50 feet, but truly if we'd gotten 25 feet, we still probably wouldn't have been quite ready for it. I sort of have two points to that. One is, 2010, 2011, we were told the dams, there was a report, the dams are at risk of catastrophic failure. And if we had dealt with that then, we would have had to release less water. That's one thing. The other thing is, you can talk a lot about hypotheticals, what would have happened, what we could have predicted, what we couldn't have. The lowest hanging fruit is information. And so I think when you have people that are truly listening to the folks that are affected, that truly have their best interests in mind, then, those are the folks that are going to think, okay, how could I at least inform people? Because now you have these folks coming out and trying to say, well, people knew they were living in this flood pool. But, tell that to my friends, out in these areas that had water up to their neck, that had to take boats over to I-10. They didn't choose that. So I think, this takes us back to the fact that we need it's urgent, and it's the time for advocates to be the leaders of the county, for folks that are not going to turn their backs on the elderly man, 92-year-old, who died on the DSNAP line because we wouldn't extend the time that people could collect DSNAP benefits. I saw people picking through piles of clothing on parking lots. Those are things I hadn't seen since I was working abroad in developing nations or where I grew up. I mean, there are many, many facets to this, and what we cannot fall into is making excuses. There's enough people doing that.
Sure. Before you respond, let me go ahead and let Aaron chime in here.
I hear what you're saying for sure. A storm of this magnitude would have been difficult for people to predict with certainty. But what we had in 2015 and 16 were a 100-year flood in each of those years. And then now in 2017, Harvey created a 500-year minimum. In some places, it was an 800-year flood. And what I'm getting at is, if you don't even believe in the concept of climate change, you certainly could not have predicted it. So I would not have predicted a storm of this magnitude, but I would have predicted that, and I did predict that these storms are coming. And even Donald Trump's administration on Friday released a 447-page document stating that climate change is worse than almost all scientists have predicted, and it is certainly caused by human activity. And if that's as much as Trump's nominated his Scott Pruitt as EPA head and denounced climate change as even being a word able to be spoken, even when his administration puts this report out, that's further and further proof that this is an issue that we need to seriously look at. Syria now is in the Paris Climate Agreement, we're the only nation. And it is absurd that portions of one party are just absolutely denying science. And I don't know how to prove that climate change is real, but I also don't know how to prove that the Earth is not flat. But the Earth is not flat, and climate change is real.
Okay, go ahead and respond, Gary.
Well, you've changed my response because I was going to talk about the age of Barker Cypress reservoirs, but now I want to say that it's time to stop mopping the blood up off the floor and bind the wound, because you seem to be very concerned about climate change, and I agree. However, shouldn't we kind of reduce the causes of climate change instead of building more reservoirs?
Yes,
think about it, okay? It's called contraception. Goodbye.
I think we need to do both.
Yeah, he's Gary's one of our regular callers who is really concerned about overpopulation. But you can hang up on Gary. Let me just say one thing I want to add to this discussion. That is, a lot of people say, we couldn't have predicted the 500-year flood. We couldn't have predicted the 800-year flood. Let's remember what a tropical storm did to Houston a few years ago. I don't remember what's the name of the tropical storm.
We're talking about Alice.
Thank you for that, Alice.
Allison.
That was a terrible storm, and if that tropical storm did that to us, we should know that people talk about these floods. Hurricanes are completely unpredictable where they land and anywhere, and we always know we got a direct hit in Houston, that we better have mitigating factors right there. Anyhow,
we lost 79,000 homes then or so. We lost enough homes as there are people to fill Minute Park twice.
Yes.
So again, there's that broken connection between the people and the folks that are making the decision. At least we could have been advocating for 10 years, asking for funds, being loud. We are the largest county in Texas. We are the third largest county in the nation. We could have spent the time advocating. We could have spent the time prioritizing those projects, parts of them, but we didn't see movement. We could spend the time informing people about the risk.
We spend so much time trying to cut taxes and trying to cut budgets that we don't see that it costs more in the long run. Think about how much the flooding has cost this county and how much of our revenues are going to mitigate that. Think about if it was done.
Well, we were spending money on the Astrodome.
Right.
It would cost, we could build probably 700 Astrodomes with the amount of losses that we're facing now. Yeah, so it's hard to build one. Now, how are we going to build 700? And I'm just going to say, the person's been fixing up the one. That's not the person that needs to continue.
Right.
We need a new slate, folks. We need a new slate.
What you have to... anyway, folks, the number is 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Before I go with any more questions, let me just go ahead and bring in Joe. Come on in, Joe, line 1. And we have lines open, folks.
Hey, happy Thursday.
Happy Thursday, Joe.
I got a question, man. What do you guys think about the profusion of toll roads around Harris County? What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I'll take that one. Toll roads are coming in because the county and the city and the state can't keep up with the demand for traffic. And toll roads, we've got the Katy Freeway on I-10, and that's great. That's one lane. You want to pay to get outside the city faster, that's fantastic. When toll roads fail is when people start to have to need the toll roads. When it's a luxury, toll roads are great, but when people need it to get to work, that's a regressive tax on people. If somebody has to get to and from work and they need to take a public road to get to and from work in a reasonable fashion, and when we don't have that, we fail our society. And Republicans love to talk about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, what we need to do is provide the tools necessary for every individual to make those boots and then pull themselves up by the bootstraps. We need a good education for everybody. That starts with universal pre-K through high school and then further education after that, and a good infrastructure to get around to and from your A and B safely.
We're speaking to Aaron Moore, and hold on a second, we're speaking to Aaron Moore and Lena Hidalgo, and this is KPFT 90.1 FM Houston. Lena, you want to continue?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate because people obviously have to this is the way people will get from point A to point B, but I think a lot of it goes back to the fact that we need to advocate for the state to restore its commitment to things like education, right? So the reason we need to do these toll roads is because we need to put pressure on our delegation in the State House. We need to put pressure. We need to work with the Harris County delegation to make sure that we are getting the state commitment to take care of these issues so that people can get from point A to point B without it being some sort of regressive tax, as Aaron was saying.
Joe, you want to come back real quick because I want to get into that one.
I'm not getting the linkage between toll roads and education. My thinking is that you charge a toll on a road until it's paid for, and then you discontinue that toll. You don't use it as a revenue source.
Let me
have you, like Beltway 8, prime example. It's long paid for. Mm-hmm. Would you support an effort to try to end tolls on Beltway 8?
Absolutely. So what you're talking about is a good mechanism to get roads built. Build the road, charge the toll until it's paid for. That seems fair to me. What happens, especially with Beltway 8, is we outsource our infrastructure and road building to other countries, even foreign countries, and they've put enough money and capital into our politicians so that the politicians allow them to build roads in our communities, and they charge tolls in perpetuity because they're in there not to serve a public good, but to make a private profit. And
so do you think if I gave you money, would that be bribery or would that be lobbying? What do you feel about the difference between lobbying and just straight bribery?
Well, I think if you as an individual gave me money, I don't think $25 is going to buy me very far. But when we've got corporations giving money to politicians, that's where I draw the line. I think that in the United States, we have a good form of capitalism when it's used properly. And individuals giving people money is okay, but not to the tune of $500,000 like the
I know exactly who you mean.
The CEO of Energy Transfer Partners gave Abbott.
It goes back to information.
Yeah.
It goes back to information. And I think, yes, I mean, people were told that it would be paid for and then they'd be done. And then we're going around the county paying toll roads still. So again, you know, where is that connection between what we tell folks or where people vote? People voted not to do the ashram. People voted for to fund early childhood education. People voted. We have to follow through on keeping people's backs.
Now, let me just add, this is my personal peeve with toll roads is I think they're immoral. Okay, we pay taxes. There are certain things that belong in the commons and certain things don't. All right, roads. Whenever we start having to pay for roads, that gives an advantage to people who already have money, and that stuff about, as you said, Aaron, bringing yourself up from the bootstrap doesn't work.
And why is it that people can only rely on roads? Right, folks that need to get to a doctor's appointment, folks that need to get to deal with their lives. We need something. We need more than just more roads.
Right. Yeah. We need public transit.
The other part of it. But yeah, I mean, and the reason I brought up this point earlier about education is it all connects back in one way or another to the property tax issue and to the fact that we don't have the commitment from the state. I
think the education connection has always been there. I mean, in more ways than one. One way is, as you said, it's symptomatic, but the other way is that an uneducated populace doesn't know that they're getting screwed. So that is just one option. You can't say that as a politician, but I can.
That's what you're for.
Yeah, they can't say it, but I can. But anyhow, thank you very much, Joe. You have a great one. Okay, my friend?
You too. Good. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
All right, buddy. All right, let's see Rick at line number 2. Come on in, Rick.
Yeah, hey, before I start into it, I don't know if you're aware, but I read that the Heartland Institute was having its conference here in Houston. You know, this cacophony of climate rejectors. And, yeah, they're trying to get it so that CO2 is declared that is not that it is a pollutant.
It is no longer a pollutant. Yes.
No longer a pollutant. It has benefits. You can ask the astronauts from Apollo 13 how beneficial it was to them. They want to absolutely transform the National Academy of Sciences.
I hear you, Rick. Rick, I don't want to cut you off, but we have to take your question because we have some other people that are going to be calling, my friend.
Yeah. I just wanted to just throw that out there. But
appreciate that, buddy.
My concern is with Harvey and aftermath and all that. And look, from the way I see it, this time around we almost got flooded, and we never get flooded. It didn't happen, but it came awfully close. And we're called a model for flood control. Okay, now we're the model. We're almost like the gold standard, I guess, according to the city agency that looks this over. Now, if we're the model, okay, Houston's in pretty bad shape. So I guess my question is, will this necessitate the abandonment of urban sprawl in favor of, I guess, more vertical
building higher, building and tall. I got you. Lena, what do you have to say about that?
And eliminating this idea of personal home ownership, at least within Harris County.
Good point. Let's see what Lena has to say about that.
These are conversations we have to have, and I think the county, the whole system and the regulations around counties were not designed for a county like Harris County, right? Where it's just huge, and you're having these types of developments. But there are plenty of things we can work on now that are lower hanging fruits. There is. First of all, we're not a model. If you listen to a lot of the engineers that had been saying we have to strengthen these reservoirs, we have to build a third dam, we have to let people know where they're living. We need another classification system for what a flood frequency is, right? It's not intuitive to say 100-year flood, 500-year flood. No one understands that. Why? Why can't we put things in the words that people can understand? And we need, so you talk about homeowners, we need democratic recovery. We need people, as we grow, as we have this opportunity to rebuild housing, to think about where we're building, where we're growing, we can work with communities, we can work with developers to make sure that we're addressing long-standing poverty issues in our county, long-standing inequality issues in our county, and so we're working and we're building with the interests of people in mind.
You want to add to that?
With building out, I think home ownership is part of the quote-unquote American dream. So people, especially in Harris County, in Texas, where everything's bigger in Texas, that's going to be more of a cultural shift where people kind of downsize. And I live in a home that's just big enough for me. And that's the way I like it. Some people like bigger homes. What we have to do is marry capitalism with human consumer protections. And that means making sure that homes are built above a certain flood year. And that means that new developments have to build detention ponds to offset their increased rain runoff. Because all those Katy rice plains that we used to have, those don't exist anymore. I think a previous county commissioner said, well, I just don't believe that the 15-foot grasses, the 15-foot deep roots of the grasses absorbs that much water. Well, the environmental scientists disagree, and that's what I'm talking about, acknowledging science and using that to write policy that works for everyone, including builders and developers, but also for consumers.
And it's not like they hadn't told us those things, right?
Everybody
they
just
knew.
dismissed it.
So that's why we need change.
Capitalism, we need to remember capitalism is a tool.
That's right.
And not a religion. Right now, capitalism is practiced as a religion. Whenever we relegate it back to being a tool, all will be fine. Line number 5, Larry. Come on in, Larry. And by the way, we have lines open, 713-526-5738. Come on in, Larry. You're hot. Larry, you want to talk about corruption? You're hot, buddy.
Yeah.
Come on in.
The problem is what existed in 1970 still exists today. When they built the City Hall Annex across the street from City Hall, the first year we had a 4-foot flood fountain in the parking garage because they built everything below Buffalo Bayou. So when Buffalo Bayou flooded and the Spaghetti Warehouse parking lot flooded, all of that water came up into the City Hall Annex. The mentality hasn't changed since 1970. If a builder wants to develop an area, all he has to do is throw money at the politicians and they approve it.
Right.
So
that's what we're trying to fix. We're trying to end that.
New politicians.
We agree.
Yes.
Okay, well, I think you should expand on that. What's going to make you different then? Thank you very much, Larry. What's going to make make you different than the person that you would be running against?
We'll be heeding those ideas. We're bringing the fresh idea, apt to listen to new things, apt to use technology, apt to bring fresh thinking, to bring that's what I've done. That's my experience, is listening to people and translating that into things that work better for them, into policies and into advocacy that's going to move them forward. So we don't, I don't have any of these additional interests. I saw what happened. I saw this is the time for us to advocate for change on the local level, at every level of government, and to not hold back, because it's our last chance. We see that the risks are just too huge. We saw the huge losses with Harvey. I focus a lot on criminal justice. I think anyone that's on the losing side of our system right now, where we're perpetuating huge inequalities, we're wasting money on a broken bail system, and then it's so easy for folks to just come out with excuses. It's an excuse factory. We saw with the election a couple of days ago, people are ready for change, are ready for new ideas, and we can bring that, and we will bring that, and we don't have those kinds of ties that 40-year ties to developers.
And they're ready for transparency. Okay, let's go to line number 1. Come on in, Randall. Line number 1.
Talking about the tollways and complaints about expanding tollways.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought up wanting to expand public transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, in state of Texas, what's been happening is money that's been set aside for infrastructure expansion, repair, etc., has been diverted into building light rail public transportation, especially in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, the money has to be made up somewhere, and so the tollways have been put in to make up that shortfall created by the push for light rail.
Yeah, I think that's a classic scenario of the federal government saying you can have A or you can have B. And I'm here, and I'm going to demand that we have both. Right now, our military budget is $700 billion. And so when somebody says, okay, you can have light rail or you can have a toll road, I'm going to say, well, I don't want option C. I don't want the military-industrial complex going into 8 wars overseas right now. I want that money spent here at home.
It's a state issue.
Well,
state money.
It's actually a combination because the federal government actually give grants to do these expansions that they want. So it's a both issue. Go ahead, Lena.
But it also goes back to the way we spend our money locally. So we have this limited amount to work with, and then we're spending it in the Astrodome, where we're spending it $610 an hour attorneys fighting a bail case. Right, our bail system has been deemed unconstitutional. We shouldn't have funded the defense of that lawsuit in the first place, and we continue spending money. And for the people that are that didn't need to be there, that pled guilty because they needed to go home and feed their children, or are just trying to get by, we're hurting them, and we're spending money that we could use a lot more intelligently. I think a lot of the issues, we've got the medical center in one of the largest medical centers in the world, and we don't have a proper mental health system. The largest mental health system is the jail. We haven't been putting the priorities where they need to be.
I like that, and I want to go ahead, and we're going to take 2 more calls, and we have to be quick on these because I want these two folks to be able to give sort of a final statement. So, Tag, come on in. Line number 2.
Yeah, I just like the example of the Woodlands with their flood control.
Mm-hmm.
When George Mitchell developed the Woodlands, he took a lot of care to try to make it so they wouldn't have problems like Barker and the reservoirs. And I don't think they really had a lot of problems up there during Harvey.
Well, it also helps that they're much higher. And it's also helped that we're the dumping ground for the lakes from up north. Well, go ahead.
There's a lot of truth to that, but still the water has to leave,
right,
and go someplace.
Oh, sure,
and a lot of flooding is due to the water not being able to get out of the...
Right.
I realize some flooding is because the river rises, or but in the Woodlands... They certainly did go to, and the thing I want to say, it's been reported that when George Mitchell was putting all that effort into controlling or to make flood control in the Woodlands, the developers in Harris County really had a big belly laugh because it took a lot more time and money and to develop a good flood control system. And nowadays it's paying off up there where it really shows a weakness here for what was not done. And I've got to say to these two guys that I really appreciate what you guys are saying with the bond things and all the things that you're saying makes a lot of sense. So I wish you folks well. And I'm going to go. Thanks.
Thank you very much for speaking, Tag. Okay, Maude, you got about 1 minute. Go ahead.
Hello.
Talk to me, Maude. 1 minute.
Hey, how y'all doing?
We're doing great, buddy.
The tax deferment that Whitmire did for the hospital system was justified, but the previous mayor, what she did for the developers. So this overdevelopment and use of tollways and all that is, if you don't have any kind of regulation, maybe your 2 young folks can work on that, getting some kind of state level at least.
That's right.
That's
what I'm hoping to work on.
What Fort Bend did, they won't develop unless they have a reservoir or a runoff set up and take on that additional, building. Unlike the 100 square miles west of Highway 6.
That's a good point. Good point. You got 15 seconds.
And to the point about, the King of Spain owns the toll road between Dallas and Fort Worth. And so I don't know where to stop on this.
Well, let me tell you, you can stop right now, Maude, but you always have some good input, and thank you for that, my friend. We'll talk next week, okay?
Hey, how about this? You know what unregulated capitalism is, right?
We know what it's also crony. You got it, buddy. You got it, buddy.
Go get them, kids.
All right. Hey, thank you, buddy. Hey, Aaron, tell us in a few sentences what you want your candidacy to be, what you want to accomplish, and why should folks vote for you?
The whole reason that I started running is because we have the greatest Constitution in the entire world. We have the freedom of speech and we have freedom of religion. Those are two things that very few countries around the world have. And when I talk to people, they all agree on many of the main issues. And when I see the problems that we have, I see a lot of solvable problems. And that's the reason I decided to run. I became an engineer to solve mathematical problems, but when I saw the social problems, I saw that there were solutions that people just weren't taking because they had ulterior motives. Mm-hmm. And I'm running to solve those problems with common sense and decency after we analyze the data and the science. So everything that we do as a society affects everybody else. Politics is involved in every aspect of your life, how big the roadway signs are and how many lights you have on your way home. So I'm running to represent everybody and when I say something, you know I mean it because there's no special interest money behind my campaign.
Thank you very much, Aaron. Same thing for you, Lena.
I'm running for the woman I met at the medical center. I was being made to sign that her son wouldn't get any more care because she couldn't afford it. I'm running for the people I've seen that have gotten caught up in a justice system when they could be contributing to our community. I'm running for the folks that have lost everything with Harvey, that weren't looked out for, that aren't being looking out for enough. I think if folks want a commissioner's court that is truly in touch with the community, I'm asking for your support. If folks want to spend more on jobs, on rebuilding, and less on holding people down and locking people up, if people want to be smart on crime, tough on crime, but also smart on it, I'm asking for your support. If we want to rebuild our infrastructure, heating, the information of the people, the scholars, the engineers, if you want a community that works for a better future for everyone, I'm asking for your support. You can check us out at linahidalgo.com.
Now, folks, as I mentioned before earlier in the program, this show is open to every single candidate that wants to come out and have their say. We were lucky enough today to have Lena Hidalgo and Aaron Moore. Thank you so kindly for having been here. I think you've enlightened a lot of folks with a lot of things that politicians don't say. So it was great to have you here, folks. Let me tell you, Virginia, Washington State, New Jersey, New York, St. Petersburg, Florida. Look all those up. It shows that the progressive movement is not dying. The progressive movement is growing. The progressive movement is alive. And the way it stays alive, it's because of you. So you make sure and stay engaged. Remember, stay engaged with the places like KPFT.org or KPFT or station. Stay engaged with the Indivisible movement. Stay engaged with all these movements that are trying to solve the problems that really need to be solved. Remember, it only starts with whom? With you. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys have a wonderful rest of the day.
Remember, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. You can personally reach me by sending an email to egberto@politicsdoneright.com. Remember, Egberto is spelled E-G-B-E-R-T-O. Change starts with you. 90.1 KPFT gives you information not tainted by corporate interest. Please visit kpft.org and contribute. Let's ensure continued access to real information and news remain available to all. Again, thank you very much for listening to Politics Done Right.